Mhm. So I guess everything is live. So hello everyone. If like today I will be drawing some vehicles and stuff like that and doing some studies and whatnot. And I will also explain a little bit of geometry and perspective type of thingies you may need to know before like jumping into drawing this type of stuff. So as always, if anyone has any type of questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. So I hope I will be able to answer them all. For today, I plan to draw some of these guys on the left, like some military tanks, vehicles, jeeps, or whatever, some motorcycles, and this cool little old looking car. I really like it. Really like how it looks. And also, I took some references from Scott Robertson, but I will talk about it a bit later. So basically, before starting doing this type of thing, you really should be aware about some different things regarding perspective. So pretty much basically in here I have some really basic blocks. If anyone is wondering, this program is Rhinoceros 3D. It's 6 version of the program is the number 6. So basically doing this type of stuff is pretty much really necessary if you want to draw any type of vehicle, because basically every vehicle is like a thing that you can put in a box, and pretty much a lot of different like vehicles, for examples, as you can see, all the military type of vehicles in here are pretty much like just combined boxes with some edges chamfered and everything. So it's not really that complex to draw, but it requires quite a lot of different things to know about. So going back here, the second really important thing are the ellipses and the perspective that you are going to use. So in here, as you can see, at the moment I have the 3-point perspective, so I got some foreshortening if I'm looking from below or from the top. And the lens length is set to 50 millimeters. We will take care of the lens length soon. But what is really important is before you start drawing to decide if you are going to draw in 2-point perspective or 3-point perspective. So in 3-point perspective, drawing from the top will look like this. In 2-point perspective, basically every single thing that is vertical will like have the constant height. So if this was x, if we were to look at it from the top, it will still be an x. So the image might look a little bit distorted, but you just need to know this type of thing before you start drawing, because you might encounter this type of problem, like this type of distortion, and you might think your drawing is pretty bad, but this is what happens if you are using 2-point perspective. And in 3-point perspective, it does not really happen. Then you have a nice foreshortening, so it looks pretty much, I think, in my opinion at least, it looks better. So the other thing that is really important in here are the ellipses. So if I take a screenshot and place it in here in the Photoshop, always remember that the, let's say, color red, well, here is the short axis of the ellipse will lead your second vanishing point. So basically it will always be directed into the second vanishing point. This guy will be the first vanishing point, and the long axis of the ellipse, let's use a blue one, is the longest line you can put in here through the middle, and it will be always like 90 degrees in relation to each other, no matter if it's 2-point perspective or 3-point perspective. So basically this is everything you really need to know about the perspective before like drawing vehicles, because like the wheels are the hardest part actually to draw properly. So yeah, and for the references, I got some images from Scott Robertson from the web, mostly because I really like the way he is drawing, because there are like a lot of geometry happening inside, and to have some sort of a reference for a line weight and this type of stuff. So if you are drawing pretty much anything, just remember like doing this type of like placing some references might really help you to achieve way better results, because you will know what you want to achieve and for example how you can shade something or how you can draw a wheel. So as you can see in here, the wheel in the background is pretty much non-existent. It's just suggestion of the pattern that is going on the actual wheel. So I guess I will start with some vehicles, like from this guy. So basically what I really like to do is to choose a brush that will fit the theme nicely. So one of the things that is really hard to do in Photoshop is to draw straight line by hand, because it kind of requires this weird movement on the graphic tablet if you don't have the graphic tablet with the screen. So it might be a little awkward for you to draw like the boxes in the actual perspective in the Photoshop. So I pretty much all the time, I use a shift to draw some boxes and to draw some straight lines. So don't be afraid of using shift for straight lines. It is fine. It is not cheating at all. Also for all the boxes that I'm going to draw, I'm not going to be like 100% like perfect with them. I kinda want to have like some sort of a sketchy feel to it. So I won't really care if the lines won't be like aligned perfectly and if there will be some small mistakes. So like in here, I kind of think I still have like a small margin of error or something like this. But just remember, if you are drawing anything, always like try to have a small margin of error, especially since all of these things are going to be hand drawn. And for the vehicles, I'm not really going for like the exact copy. I'm kind of treating the reference as a like keyword for a drawing. I kind of want to draw something that is armored in a sense. So for example, this is an armored vehicle, but I'm not really going to like try to mimic it perfectly. I kind of want to just play a little bit more with the geometry without like stressing too much about everything. So I want the drawing to be a little bit more fun instead of stressful. And some of the things I won't like construct perfectly. I kind of want for it to be a little more loose. I guess I could, but I guess it will also take way too long to construct everything perfectly. So some of the things that I will be doing will be pretty much like shortcuts. So not everything will be perfect. And even if I mess up some proportions, I don't really care that much, since this is a study. I guess like one of the things that makes a study is like the ability to mess up something. So if I mess up something, I will just make more studies, and in the future they will look, I guess, better. They will have less mistakes, less errors. So at the moment, nothing too fancy. I will change a lot in regards of the perspective and geometry, because as I said, the boxes that I'm going to use are only there to help me. They are not here like to limit me. So if I can make my life easier by using boxes, I will make my life easier by using boxes. And I will rotate the screen a lot, because if I can rotate the screen a lot, the whole drawing will be a bit easier. So I won't stress about drawing everything in a position that I don't like to use. So for some angles, most likely I will prefer to rotate the screen. So yeah. And for this type of stuff, if you are like going to draw pretty much anything, I always highly recommend you to gather some references. So for example, as I did in here with Scott Robertson, because it will really make your life easier. Like if you are going to draw everything like from scratch, as I am doing now, and you don't have like a visual cue, what are you trying to achieve in a sense, it might get a little bit overwhelming because you don't know where are you going with the thing that you are drawing, especially if you are a beginner. So having a reference, especially like a theme related reference, might give you some more ideas on how to go with your work and what to do with it and what direction you should take with your artwork. So in the end, most likely it will result in a better piece. And for the shading, it's not many type of like, not many examples of shaded vehicles in here, but I guess I will go for something like bottom right, I guess, maybe something like this. So I will see. But once again, I could experiment with the shading by myself, but I prefer to like see what others are doing, what I like, and I will try to mimic it. Because after mimicking something for like quite long, at some point I will start doing things as I think they should look, and instead of like exploring 10,000 mistakes, I will simply like explore already good ideas. So I don't really have to stress about like making many mistakes this way. This edge is kind of annoying at the moment. Also, drawing this type of vehicles is quite relaxing, especially if you have like the basic understanding of geometry, because you can just play with some shapes and everything. Sometimes, like if you are drawing sports car, it might get way harder because like sports car, they usually have really like organic geometry to them, and sometimes it's really hard to understand the shapes that are happening inside the car. So drawing like sports cars might get like overwhelming quite quickly, but drawing this type of like military vehicles and everything is way more forgiving, it's way easier in a sense, because you kind of don't have to think that much about like really intricate, I guess it was the word, like for a really complex geometry. It's just boxes on top of boxes on top of boxes and everything. So with this type of guy, if I understand the geometry of this guy, and I pretty much do, as I said, I don't really care about it being perfect, then maybe I will be able to draw it, like to rotate it in my head. So I will be able to draw the same guy without like the need of reference. And a friend of mine is the first one in a chat. He was bothering me to like pozdrowić him, to cheer him. I don't know how to say it. To greet him. So I greet you, Wilczek. Hello. And also remember, if you are working, especially in Photoshop, like you can rework pretty much everything, so you don't really need to stress about like anything. If something goes wrong, like if you make like a bad line or pretty much whatever, just like brush it off and rework it. Like you can pretty much do everything in Photoshop without like any problems. So in here also you can see the back wheel is kind of extending beyond the box I prepared for myself. And also it's not a problem, like the box is only here to help me. So if I will need to extend it, it won't be really a hard task. I'm not sure. Okay, this is some sort of a cage on the back of the truck. So I guess it... Oh, okay. I looked at the reference wrongly. It's not like protruding, this is the shape. And it's going in here. And this is a solid piece. So this one will be shorter. The doors will go in here. Yeah, and sometimes if you are drawing, just take a moment to look at your reference, because sometimes you might simply not see something really obvious. So as I did now, I kind of misunderstood the back. I kind of thought this shape in here is kind of like this. Whoops. And it turns out it's not. So that happens especially a lot with my students, the beginner students, that they are drawing something and they are not really paying attention to the reference, and they end up drawing, like inventing something from scratch when there is no need to reinvent something. It especially often happens with the trees or this type of a theme. Also, I guess the trees will be one of the themes for the future streams. Trees are cool. So yeah, usually when I'm also drawing this type of stuff, I will try to, this one will be shorter back there. I usually try to draw what I cannot see. By this I mean something that is hidden like in the background. So kind of if this model will be a wireframe, I will be able to see through it, but I'm trying also to draw as I'm like using a wireframe, because it kind of allows me to understand like the geometry a bit better. Like for example, for the back seat, for this type of in the background, I kind of know now the middle of the car is in here, so it might be a bit more helpful, and it will be in here. This is the middle line of the car, so it might be helpful in the future. So for example, for the windows, again, if I like make these two lines and then like follow the degree, like the lines going in here, then I will know where I have the middle of this truck or something like this. Now I kind of see the front of my truck is a little bit small, so I might like select it and make it a bit bigger. In this shot, like in this perspective, it won't really matter that much if I do something like this, because the perspective is kind of flat. It's not really like dynamic or anything, so I don't really need to care a lot about the perspective. I can mainly like copy shapes and it will be fine, most likely. But yeah, at the moment I'm kind of starting to have like a really solid base. And for the wheels, because the wheels are like the hardest part to draw actually, I will need to draw some ellipses. So I guess today I will use the ellipse tool, but the basic idea if you are drawing an ellipse is if you have a square, like any surface that is a square, and if you have like 4 points in here, if you connect these points, you will pretty much get the ellipse. It's kind of hard to draw on the graphic tablet because like the movement is extremely unnatural, but it gives you like the basic idea what or how it should look like. So basically you have like 4 points that are tangent to the ellipse, and now the second vanishing point will be, as I said, the short axis, so the box for this guy will go this direction. It's not the prettiest ellipse in the world, but it does the job. And for the sketching, if you are sketching like something like this, will do. So in here I will just try to like sketch what I think is the right angle of the ellipse, and I always can rotate like the wheels in the front can be rotated. So for example, if it will be turning, the wheels will look like this. Maybe I will leave it like this. I kind of like it the way it looks. Just remember the angle of the cylinder will kind of also change, and the cylinder in the background, well, this one will be a bit wider because we can see this wheel a little bit more from the side because it's like further away from us. Oops. And if you are using Photoshop, just like use what Photoshop was made for, like use all the functions, you use all the transform thingies. It will make your life easier. Photoshop is here to help you, not to make it harder for you. And remember, the wheel on the front will be, well, will be like slightly bigger because like it is in the front. So if we were to like look at this vehicle from the top, like let's say This is the mask. Now the wheels, instead of like being like this, they will be like this. They are rotated to the viewer. So I don't know if it's cool. I guess I will leave them like this. It kind of looks like a mistake, but later I will see if I want to rework it. The wheel in the background I will do normally. I don't think like this wheel kinda like can rotate, so this wheel will be a little bit more like seen from the front. One of the things that you really need to keep in mind is the perspective again. It's something that's really easy to forget. This wheel in here, if it's in here, the wheel in the background will be slightly smaller. So the wheel, instead of being like this, it simply will be smaller. Like you need to remember to have the constant like size of the wheels. And I think the wheels should be a bit bigger, like overally. So I will increase the size of this wheel, move it a bit more here, and I will increase the size of this wheel. Then I can like increase the size as well. Then I can increase the size of this wheel. But I try to keep in mind that the perspective will still apply to these guys. So I might leave it this way. And for the back wheel, usually I try to, like, as I said, draw everything that I cannot see, because sometimes like you might see this a little bit of this wheel in the background. So as you can see in here, you can still see the part of the wheel in the background. In here, for example, it's completely hidden, but still it will make your life easier if you want to like to draw it. And if you will like get lost in all the geometry, remember you still can use some colors. So for example, I know this will be in here, so I know this will be this line, this will be this line. So pretty much the whole thing happening in the background will be more or less like in here, maybe slightly lower because of the perspective happening. And now if I want to like place the wheel, I kinda can guess it will be somewhere around in here. And if it's not like 100% exact, one of the really nice things you can do for the layers, for seeing if everything that you have drawn is correct, is to rotate the drawing. So sometimes after looking for way too long at our drawing, it might look a bit weird. So wait, this one, I only want to make this guy a bit wider, and a bit closer. So I can join all the elements and then I can rotate them. So this way I will be able to see if this wheel is like placed properly or not. I think something still is a little bit odd with it, so we might check it. It will go like this, like this. Here's the back, here's the back. Yep. Middle will be around there. So I don't have like exactly the same perspective as the reference does. My perspective is a bit different. I guess my vehicle is a little bit more view from the side, and I also think the front is a bit too narrow, so I will just make it a bit wider. And again, as you can see, it's not like anything extremely complex, it's just like some basic geometry, like shenanigans. And for refining these wheels, because as you can see the shape in here looks like this, it goes here, 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 here. I will simply add the same shape to my sketch from the side view. So basically it will go like this, then down from the bottom like this, then up, up, and pretty much this will be the geometry of this wheel. And in here I will only like mark a small offset and add small ellipses in here. The same thing happening in the background, so I will mark it. Look. And again, this drawing is not meant to be like the most perfect like geometry type of study in the world. This is like a sketch. I don't want to like spend 10 hours on it. I could, but I don't really want to. I kind of want to just draw for a practice. Oh, thanks, Space Lizard. Today I will not be drawing Diablo, but if you want later, I can like open the file with the roulette. So you might like roll the monster I will draw next, or just pick from A to L and from 1 to 7. So if you pick something from it, then I will let you know, or I will just remember the number and will draw the next monster that is in here. So yeah. So now what I want to do is to add like the windows to the car, like to mark them, because like I guess I will later just start maybe shading it, this one. We'll see how it will go. So I'm just adding some like small details, some offsets to it. Also, what is really cool about the vehicle, like the military vehicles, as apart like from them being really blocky and kind of easier to draw, is usually vast majority of the things that you are going to design that is going to be cool might be maybe something like military related type of things. So all the science fiction type of stuff mostly is military type of thingies. So you will also build your visual library of how these things look in the real world. So you will pretty much benefit from like studying this type of themes pretty greatly, because like every single mecha that you can draw and everything pretty much is like a variation about the vehicles. Okay, it's a cylinder from the side. I guess the windows need to be a bit wider. So again, if something will not be like perfect, I can always rework it. So as you can see in here, there's a really cool looking geometry, because there's like a cylinder like inserted into like the front part of the vehicle, and you have this really cool looking like transition of the shapes. So it's something that I have never seen before, pretty much. So it's a really neat type of detail that I will try to remember, because most likely I am going to use it somewhere, somehow. It looks really cool. And to now add this like shroom looking part. So I have no idea what it is, probably some sort of a like sensor or whatever, but it looks kind of neat, so I will add it. Also, this type of details are really nice to remember, because later, as I said, if you are going to design some sort of a vehicle like for yourself, or some sort of a mecha, you can like populate the whole geometry with this type of like small details, so it will make everything look a little bit more believable. Like you don't always need to know what is what and how everything works, but it might help you like in the long run to make your designs a little bit more believable, because doing this type of thing will kind of like mark on the design that you kind of are aware of the fact that a mecha or something like this should have some sort of a radar on it or a sensor or whatever, and instead of like doing the classic antenna, something like this might look a little bit more cool. And hello boss GFX, thanks for stepping by. So as you can see, the whole drawing is extremely messy, but as I said, I don't really care. Now I kind of want to mark the tires, so the pattern on the tires is kind of fun to make, because as you can see, you can always place it like between the lines and to just try to copy it into the lines. So in here, there's like this zigzag happening, like this thing is happening. I guess I will like simplify it a bit. Whoops. And it is made out of something that kind of looks like a stars or pentagons. So something kind of like this, I guess. It's not really a pentagon in here. Now it is. Yeah, but the basic idea is like this kind of going kind of like this. So the initial pattern was not like really valid. Oh yeah, just to get the general idea. And it's not really looking good, so I guess I will start from scratch. So I guess I will go with the side first. So on the side there's this type of shape, then there is this type of shape, and then there is this type of shape. So in this case it was easier to simply draw out the shapes and then take care of the whole pattern. So I will go with this shape in here. And now, after selecting it, also it's a quite cool trick. If you press Ctrl Alt T, it will allow you to like transform the alternative like copy, and then if you press Ctrl Alt Shift T, then it will allow you to like duplicate the transformation. So you can see the whole pattern is really easy to make this way. And I guess I will simply try to like place it on top. Thanks, Mikołaj. So now I can use the warp feature to apply the pattern onto the wheel. It won't be like perfect application, but it might be better than drawing everything by hand. So at least it will give me like a really basic idea how it should like deform on the wheel. It looks like shit, so it was a failed attempt. I think it needs to be a bit longer. There is also a way to create like a cylinder in Photoshop and to texture it like with a pattern, but I am not going to do this because I don't want to like incorporate any type of 3D with this type of guy. But if you were to design something like this, then I think 3D is really helpful, because instead of like drawing all the geometries you will pretty much have like a finished model, so you can just apply it, like place it somewhere and make it look okay, like immediately. So if you are going to design something, then use as much 3D as you wish. Oh, the transformation tool, the warping tool is not really nice for me today. And this does not look as bad as I thought it will be. Like, it gives me the general idea for the pattern and what is happening. So later I might be able to like redraw it. And for the guy in the back, I will simply squish it a bit, and it is almost fine. Just remember, this is just a sketch, so I will try to emulate this pattern later when I will going to shade this type of guy. So yeah, this is the pattern. Also, if you are designing a vehicle or something like this, it might be a cool idea to actually design this type of a pattern. So anyone who is going to like texture it or something like this, maybe it will be you, will have easier time with doing this type of task. So the understanding of the whole sketch might be a bit better. So one more thing to connect. And I did not want to connect everything. Whoops. Layer via cut. Now it's separate. Okay. And one of the things that I am going to do now is to block the whole shape before like shading it. Do I want to do this? No, I don't want to do this. Usually I will like fill out the layer underneath the line art, and then I will simply try to like render everything because I will have like a sharp mask for it. But I guess in this case I will go on the lights. I will go with some really basic shading. So I will start with like the really deep shadows. So everything that is black will be painted like a deep shadows, and then a slight variation with some tones. And one of the things that you can do if you are not sure how to like interpret all of this, because it's hard to sometimes decide if you want to go and shade this guy or this guy, then simply go to the threshold, connect it with this guy, and play with the slider. So now you have like a pretty solid reference on how to draw like this type of a vehicle. So I guess for the wheels it looks okay. Maybe a little bit more to the left. Have more details in the wheels. And for this guy, I will go to have like a lot of different details at the top. And now with the threshold, I can combine these guys together. So I will kind of have a pretty neat reference on how to like shade this guy. So it won't be like too black everywhere. It will only be black where I want it to be black. So pretty much how to make a reference 101. You don't always need to like invent everything from scratch. You can like use the technology to help you with it. So now I will just simply take the brush and I will start filling out the gaps. Also, by working with the photo reference, you will have a better understanding of light because you are not trying to reinvent the wheel. You are not trying to invent the light. You are trying to understand what and why is happening. So how to interpret like the shapes in the shadows so they look like okay. So in here, as you can see, really cool things are happening in the lights. There are like the pattern is going on inside the light that kind of make it look like light. The front of my vehicle is a bit different, but I don't really care. mine is a little bit more flat. The one on the left is a little bit taller. Also, when you are shading stuff like this, also don't try to like perfectly fill out the like shapes in here, like leaving some like marks inside might be a good idea. Maybe even you shouldn't go with like the 100% opacity. Maybe just go in here and for the transfer set minimum to like 80%. So even if you press really well, pen pressure 80%, it should work. And I have no idea why it's not working and why it is changing. Off? No. I don't know. It should work. So I guess I will turn off the geometry, the opacity once again, and simply work with 100% opacity. Maybe I will make the brush a bit smaller so I will have all the details that I want to have in there. And then now it's kind of like copying something like this. It's not really taxing on the brain to like copy this type of from the reference. And also I really like to have some like line art underneath it, so all the construction and everything, because it kind of gives like the someone who is like looking at it a little bit more information about what they are looking at. So like the brain usually likes this type of like help from all the construction lines and everything. So sometimes it's really worth to like leave it underneath it. Maybe it should be a bit like more delicate, but I don't know. I will leave it at the moment as it is. And in here I have a really nice big graphic shape. Also, what is really cool about working with black and white sketches, like the total black and white sketches, is you can really explore how the shapes are forming, like what are the shapes of the vehicle and how you can interpret and simplify them. So for example, sometimes if you are like drawing something from the imagination, you might get way too complex with all the shapes that you are like drawing, and it might be hard to understand what and how to simplify some things. So for example, I guess this whole thing in here, in my case, will be a bit simpler. I'm not really sure about the placing of this wheel. I will move it slightly to the side. Yep, I think it looks a bit better now. So the whole shape, like underneath it, will be a bit simpler. So instead of like going all the fuzzy in there, I'll simply go with something like this, and it should be fine. The things in the front, like these two small elements that are happening in the front, I will mark them by erasing from the black parts. So instead of like drawing everything in here, I will also erase some things to add some details into it. And as you can see, also the lines underneath, like the erased parts, are adding a little bit more details to it. So in the end, it looks a bit better. In here, I will try to mark a bit from the tire. So I will use some like dots to show the texture a bit more. And what I really want to have are those small incisions on the side of the tire, so it will kind of look a little bit more like that it has a dimension. And I will round it a little bit more from the bottom with because usually when you are drawing a cylinders, they are never cut like this. They are never cut like this. It's always should be like a smooth type of shape. So if you are like having troubles with it, just after like finishing the wheel, just round it a bit on the bottom. I don't know if I will manage to draw all the vehicles like today that I have on the left, but definitely I want to draw some motorcycles. So I guess after this guy, I will try to like draw a motorcycle. See this bar in here. It's pretty cool looking like lines. Also, as I said, if someone is like new in here, feel free to ask anything in the comments, like in the chat, I guess. If I will be able to help, I will gladly try to do so. And now, as you can see, the wheel on the left, it's a bit lower than the wheel on the right, so I need to remember to add the small part on the bottom to the wheel of the wheel, so it will read a bit better. Fill in the gaps in between. Also, if you like can see the light is from the top left, or maybe like from the top, the bottom part of the pattern will be in shadow, so it's also quite self-explanatory way to add shadows or where to add them. Just like the light will direct the shadows. And I want to add a bit deeper shadows to it. And on top, as you can see, it's kinda like having this type of pattern, so I also want to include it in here. Because I will add this small thing. And one of the things that will really make your wheels pop, like to make them look a bit more 3D, is to add like the darker plane in the wheel, because like the part in here naturally will get darker, so like placing it in the shadow might really make the difference for the wheel to pop out of the screen. Also remember, I'm drawing the wheel in a bit different setup, so I'm not always trying to entirely copy what I'm drawing. And for the small balls, I will just erase some things in here. Wheels are kind of like the hands for the car, so you can like include a bit more detail into them. Preferred was like this, and when the top was in shadow. This is the way. The wheel in the back, I kind of feel like should end like in here. Also, sometimes if you are like drawing, especially if you're like making a looser drawing, without like really paying attention to all the geometry, like in here I have the basic idea of the geometry, but as I said, I don't really focus on it that much. Sometimes you might just go with your gut. If you are just feeling something is not like in the right place, just change it, move it a bit. Like sometimes you need to, sometimes things that are like way too like perfect, like way too proper, actually look odd. So sometimes you might need to like break the rules a bit to make something look like better, because not everything like properly placed in perspective might look natural. Especially this is especially like happening with all the humans and everything. So if you were like drawing a human figure from like a weird angle, you might notice how weird sometimes the body behaves, like how weird some body parts look while foreshortened. So Yeah. Mhm. And also, if like you will be drawing this type of stuff more, later it will be way easier to like make all the studies and everything. It will go way quicker. Like I guess this is the most important part, because instead of like drawing all the geometry, you'll pretty much start with all the graphic shapes. So in a sense, this is a goal for me, to just be able to draw everything without like using all the geometry, just to eyeball it and to make it look okay. But because I'm not really drawing a lot of vehicles, like this is a theme I was always kinda like avoiding, because I don't really like drawing vehicles. I used to not like it, now I kinda do. So I'm kinda stuck in it a bit more. But by studying it, just will only make everything pretty much way easier for me. So with time, I guess the skill will come. And thanks. I'm glad you like it, boss. I'm not entirely sure how I want to make this shaping here. I like that in here it's kind of like blending together. In my setup, I don't think I can do this type of thing, because I see the wheel a bit more from the side. So I don't think this shape will blend as nicely. It will look kind of odd. Maybe later I will like add some shadows to it. And again, most likely I have made like several mistakes with this guy, but I don't really care. After like finishing everything, like finishing all the drawings, I always can like go back to them, like review them, and see what is working, what is not. Because sometimes if you are like actually drawing and like trying to focus on way too many things, you might like forget about something really like obvious. So maybe like even the whole ellipses, like the whole wheels, are drawn improperly at the moment. But maybe sometimes I will need like a fresh eye to see if it is actually a case. And usually this is also the easiest way to go with the drawing. Like if you are studying something, if you feel something looks weird and it feels not right, most likely it is not right. And if you think something is wrong with the piece, most likely everybody that will like see the piece will also think something is not right with it. So always like remember to listen to your guts. And this is like, I guess, the easiest tips. Actually, it's one of the tips that I received from the school that I'm currently teaching at. I don't remember who told me this, but basically it went like, if it looks wrong to you, it will look wrong to everybody else. So just rework it and work on it as long as you need to make it look okay for you. And sometimes you will just go and hit the wall, like you will feel like you know what is wrong, but you have no actually idea how to improve on it. And if you hit the wall, it means you kind of like reached your limit. So then just start a new piece and try to apply knowledge in the new piece, because it's kind of impossible to make every single like artwork perfect. So sometimes it's just better to move on to the new artwork. It might be even easier to move on to the new artwork. And I forgot to show you what is the difference between the long the lens length. So for example, in here we are using 50 millimeters, so more or less this is how the humans are like seeing the world. And if we go like with something extreme, for example, like a really wide lens, 20 millimeters, you can also see how the geometry like is distorting, like it's looking really distorted. If we go with something like 5 millimeters, then the perspective is really crazy. So sometimes also a lot of beginners, like sometimes, pretty much all the time, they don't really think about the perspective they are using. So they are placing vanishing points way too close to each other, because you can see in here the vanishing points are really close to each other, and it's causing the whole geometry to like go bonkers. It looks kind of weird. Like, it's extremely dynamic. It's a good idea for like a sports car and everything, but not for every single car. But on the other hand, if we go with something like 200, and basically we are placing the vanishing points further apart, it will cause the geometry to be like really static, kind of like even boring. And a lot of like boring cars in a sense are shot in this type of perspective. So you really need to stand really far away to like capture the whole thing. At the moment, like, the observer is in the program sitting exactly at the same spot. So if we change back to the 50, this is how we will see these things. This is how far we need to stand from those things to see them, like with 200 millimeters lens length. It's a really topic worth exploring, so I guess I will like talk about it a bit more in the videos about the perspective I'm planning to make like somewhere this year. So yeah. But if you are like going exclusively to draw some vehicles, as I do today, then like be my guest to know this information. It might really solve a lot of like weird questions for you, because really often like beginners, especially beginners, even sometimes a bit more advanced guys, are not aware of these things, and they go with the gut, and because they were drawing like really a lot, they are able to like pinpoint everything like almost perfectly, but they might not know why it is working this way. So learning even like the basics of the photography might be really beneficial for you if you are planning to become an artist. Like, at some point it will be inevitable to do so. Like, you will need to know a bit about the perspective and the photography. Also with this guy, because as I said, I'm not really trying to like copy the thing on my reference, it can also, instead of like a study, it can be called a small redesign in a sense, because like I'm not trying to mimic things. Like, I'm not trying to copy the look, I'm trying to draw something that is really roughly based on the look. In here I'm like staying pretty true to the reference, but it is not always the case. For the shroomy part, I wanted to be a little bit more shiny, because in here it's pretty much entirely black. The deep shadows. And as you can see, the drawing of the whole thing is not really like time consuming. Actually, shading is the thing that is really time consuming with this type of guys, especially if you like don't really know what you are doing. And in this case, I don't really know what I am doing that much, because I'm not really working that much with this type of like things. And there is a face in here. Yeah, nice. All the small details. Sometimes the coolest thing to add like to the drawing are like the small shapes that are happening, for example, in the windows. And here's all of this like small details, all the dots. This is what kind of makes like the black and white drawing a little bit more alive. Because when you are drawing this type of things, just remember to have like a big shapes, like a big strong shapes, and to have some shapes that are like smaller and are in a greater numbers. So for example, if you have like one big shape, have 5 medium shapes to it and 10 small shapes to it, it will like visually have a lot of balance in the whole piece. It will bring a lot of balance to the whole piece, I guess. pipes in here. And I guess it's close, getting finished. On the layer underneath it, I will add some shadows, like cast shadow from the actual vehicle. Also, this is the nice thing about drawing like the vehicles in this perspective. It's not only a way easier than to, for example, draw this type of guy from the top, but also if you are adding like a shadow, it's pretty much just making like a darker line underneath it with not really like perfect edge to it. So just destroy the edge a bit more, and you end up with a pretty like decent looking shadow for this type of guy. And this is how it looks without like any line. So it looks kind of like a truck, which is nice. I'm only kind of need to add a bit more details to this guy in here. It's way too big and way too empty. It's missing some of the bolts. And it needs this like crease line in here. And of course in here I am mostly working with like really like solid shapes, but if you are like shading this type of guys, you can always like also use some raster like shading. So for example, you can achieve different like grays by like combining the lines together. So as you can see, it's pretty much creating the gradient. So I'm not really a huge fan of shading like this way, but if we put it further away, you can see the gradient is naturally occurring. So it might be like a neat idea to also add somewhere. I guess it looks a bit more, it looks better for the organic stuff, type of stuff. And what I also want to add is the background a bit at least. So I will take this brush, go like this, remove it from the car. I should mask it so I will have like a more control on top of it. And then I will simply try to remove some shapes from the top so it will look like a trees. And I will make it a bit lighter because it is in the background. And for this guy, I guess I would call it done. No, I don't want. What is where? Okay, I only need to get rid of this guys, and I cannot do this because I flattened my layers. So before like flattening everything, make sure this guy's to the in here. And yeah, without lines, it also looks cool. Maybe the lines should be a little bit like more gentle. So we'll like cut them out. Layer the cut, and I will reduce the opacity. Nah, I like them heavy. Okay. And the pattern for this guy is in here. So yeah. So basically this is how it looks. And also for the shadows, if you are like if you have the light from here, let's say, remember always to like increase the line weight in the actually area that is in the shadow. So it might look like this, and then well, this will go here, here. We'll have this point here, here, and pretty much this will be the shadow for this guy. Yep. Whoops. it's not really proper, just to give you a basic idea. And sometimes you might need to like remove some dots in here to make the end of the geometry visible. So move it like in a hard way, just add some raster to it so the edge will glow a bit. It might work like this. So yeah, this will be the first guy for today. Remember to save when you are drawing this type of stuff. So I will hide the threshold and I will place him in here. And now we will go a little bit more with the bike. So I guess I will start with the bike on the left. So what is really nice if you are going to draw some bikes is to draw yourself some simple reference. So for example, I will draw it from the side to give me like a basic idea of the proportions. And this is why drawing circles is hard. Slow artistic circles. And I'm not drawing it the second time. I'll place it somewhere in here at the moment. So I'm trying to prepare like a really simple reference for the geometry of the bike. Not like really focus on the details, just to focus on the shapes that are in here and to see how they relate to each other and how they relate to the whole thing. Like exhaust pipes. I'm not sure if the second wheel is placed correctly, but it kind of looks okay. So here I will have an engine. Of course, you can spend on this type of a drawing like several hours to make it like extremely neat and nice. But once again, I'm just trying to draw for fun some things. So I don't really care that much about the quality of it. I want to make it look nice, but I don't want to get crazy. And as I said, to spend way too long on every single one of them. Something is happening in the back. Some handles and some shenanigans going on in here. So I guess more or less this is like the proper proportion of this bike. Maybe it should be a bit taller in here. But yeah, the basic idea is in here. And also you can always like grab a reference with actually the bike from the side. It is also a good idea. But I wanted to see what is happening in here, like what are the details in there. So now you can see that pretty much the whole bike is, let's say this is an X, this is an X, and this is like 2X, oops, 2X, X, and a 3/4 of X. So it kind of gives me the idea of the bike of the boxes that I want to draw. Because in here, once again, if you can imagine a box for this type of thing, like you can place it in a box, then if you draw a box and you have the general understanding what is where, then drawing the rest of the bike is pretty much just like a practice. So the bikes are not really wide. And I'm kind of eyeballing the geometry and the perspective and everything for it, so it might end up looking kind of wonky, but as I said, it's just a study. I prefer to like make these mistakes now instead of like making them while working for a client or something like this. So basically this goes there, and this line will go somewhere like here. And if everything closes nicely and kind of looks like it is in perspective, now I kind of feel the bottom lines are not in perspective. There should be a bit lower. This part should be a bit wide, like taller. Now it's better. So now I can pretty much just like try to sketch. I will do it on the new layer. I will just try to sketch the whole bike. Because again, I want to place like the main points first, so I'm not getting distracted by all the like stuff that is happening in here. I'm trying to place like the really basic geometry first, and then I will try to like place the rest of the motorcycle. Thanks a lot, Sketchbook Digital. It's a bit weird to say it. I never named anyone as a sketchbook, so something new. I'll place it in the box. So just remember, like the ellipse more or less will tilt a bit more. I can see now the short axis of the ellipse will go to the same direction as the rest of the bike. And again, I could go way slower on this part to like match all the details properly and everything and whatnot, but I just want to sketch this guy out and later like refine the sketch. And later, if you're like on a level of Kim Young-gi, then you can pretty much draw everything from the imagination without any problems, so you don't even need to draw boxes. I also don't know what is a delay, like what delay is on the YouTube, so I have no idea what like you are seeing at the moment. Sometimes, like if you're referring to something, I might not get the exact idea what you are talking about. So okay, it's not going like this. It's going like this. So it's definitely not the nicest bike ever, but it is a bike in a bit different perspective than I have in the reference. This part will be a bit higher. You can also treat this type of sketch like a really like rough, like what marker type of thing is. So in here, as you can see, the geometry underneath it is not like really precise. It's mostly working like a shape. So in here, I can also work with this type of thing, kind of more like a shape. So I will kind of treat it like a really lightly put values underneath everything. So later I will like just reduce the opacity of it and just I will draw on top of it. So then I might make it look nicer in the end. And remember, the wheels will be in perspective, so the back will be a bit taller. Again, sometimes you will just need to like explore the workflow just to see what will work for you and to see how it will end up. So it's not looking too great, but it's not looking like really bad. It looks kind of okay, I guess, as long as it sits in perspective. it is okay. So I could do the same trick like with the threshold to like see how it looks like. I can also try to transform it a bit more to distort the perspective a bit, and it looks a bit better after distorting everything. So yeah, in here, top, the whole thing should be a bit lower, like here. There's a bit more space for everything happening here. So yeah, basically what this type of thing will be is like I can mark everything as a bit thicker lines. So this will be, the whole thing will be actually a bit thicker as a drawing. I can reduce the opacity of it, so it will like really be a really light type of sketch. And now on the new layer, I will also move this guy a bit closer. To me, on the new layer, I will simply try to draw everything basing on this one. And if something is not like right, I can like move all the things like around. It's not that big of a deal. As long as I remember about the perspective, it should look just fine. So yeah. And of course you can, as I said, spend like 10 hours drawing something like this. If it's like your goal, then it's all okay. But I don't really think like spending that long on a simple sketch is really worth it. Unless you have like a really specific goal to improve like your precision or your line work or whatever, then you should work as long as you need to. But if you are just doing it kind of for fun, feel free to experiment with everything. And while drawing this type of stuff, it's always nice to remember you are kind of interpreting everything what you are seeing, so you are not trying also to draw like a perfect copy, because in a sense it is kind of impossible to draw a perfect copy. You are trying to invent a way on how to place lines so they will look like the things that you want them to look as, if it makes sense. Like for example, in here I'm not drawing like the whole like this thing. I have no idea how it's called. I'm trying to like suggest that is in there. Same for this rubbery part in here. I'm not trying to draw it like perfectly. I'm trying to suggest that something like this is happening in here. So it might be, yeah, so it will look like good for a viewer. So here I will also add some cross sections. It usually helps reading the lines. And the nice thing sometimes you can do just to make a drawing a little bit more hard, just to like increase the roughness of the sketch, because like drawing motorcycles, like they are not that hard to draw, but they might be problematic sometimes. But if you are using the reference and you kind of want to increase the toughness of the drawing of the study, just use the reference that is like the direction of the reference is reversed. It's like it's mirrored. So you will like force yourself to think about the geometry, like how to rotate the geometry in the perspective. So instead of like copying, you will end up trying to understand what is actually happening in there. And again, the more you will do this type of things, the easier it will get with time. And if anyone is also wondering where to like learn this type of stuff, Scott Robertson actually have a book about like drawing. It's called How to Draw by Scott Robertson. And it pretty much contains every single thing that you may need for a perspective and geometry type of thingies. It's not an easy book to understand because it's like a really like complex and advanced in a sense, but it's definitely worth a try. So in here, it's really worth reading. Move this guy here. And now, because as you can see, there are like a lot of different cables happening here, I will just try to suggest something like this happening here with some like really simple shadings. So instead of like trying to make it look perfect, I will only mimic. I will make like the illusion of something complex happening in there. And I always really like to draw this type of lights with some like simple planes. It's really easy to make them look shiny or like they are made out of glass. And I think like if you are struggling with this type of stuff, just try to practice it like on the paper actually instead of Photoshop, because like the Photoshop actually is pretty much the graphic tablet is pretty much adding some like problems to it. Like it is not really increasing the hardness of the exercise. Like I am drawing for like I guess 8 years around on the tablet, but in terms of like drawing geometry and everything, I'm still not really used to do it. Like I feel way better on drawing geometry on the paper, like without any type of rulers or stuff like this. Like I'm kind of feeling the tablet is kind of limiting me in a sense, but it also might it most likely mean that I kind of lack practice, and that's all, because I saw a lot of great artists like doing this type of stuff digitally and they don't have problems with it, so I guess it all comes down to the practice. But yeah. And now I'm kinda slowly building the small details. So instead like working from like overall picture to the details, I'm kinda like going a little bit more like a printer, so from the left to right, and I'm trying to just draw everything like at the same, like one after another. Usually I suggest to like go from like the overall picture to the details, but it's not always the case. I feel like drawing like this, so I will draw like this. For drawing this type of stuff like this, like mirrors, always remember it is also a geometry. You can construct all of this. So for example, if you were to construct this type of like mirrors like correctly, you should start with like, let's say, a box or a plane on the ground, then just add, like make a trapezoid out of it. It's almost even. And then you can, for example, like place the point A in here, the point B in the perspective will be here, and then you can go like here, here, 1, 2, it will be in the perspective, and then you just connect these guys. Then you like add some circles to it. So in the end, it will allow you to create like a banded geometry in the perspective. So it might get easier for you to draw. this type of things. Metal reflections. Rubber will be darker. I always really liked the shape of this, not engines, of the fuel canisters. I'm not sure if the word is correct. On the bikes, they have this like really cool teardrop type of shape on them, so I always really enjoyed them, like this shape. And as you can see, I'm working kind of slowly on it, like adding layer after layer. So I actually prefer to draw it this way. So adding layer after layer, and slowly but surely going to the desired outcome. Drawing this type of pipes also is really fine. Like drawing pipes usually is fun thing because it's like a neat, like thin geometry type of thing that allows you to like work on a really cool looking details, especially with all the like differences in thickness and small like changes in angle of the pipes. Then they like really shine in terms of like being fun to draw. Higher. And the engine. I think every single motor like has this really like really similar engines, so the shape is like really similar. I don't know much about like motors, but I think this is a really characteristic type of a detail you can add to them. And remember, if you're like shading metal, it should be shiny. There should be something happening with the lights on it, so it won't be like boring. And the parts underneath it protruding a bit, I guess. I'm not sure if it's like lined with the tubes or if it's outside. I guess it should be lined with them. Kinda wouldn't make sense for them to be outside. I guess it will like make drawing harder. So I will try to flatten everything a bit more. Some piping. Usually when you draw and you feel like you don't understand what you are looking at, because sometimes it's like really hard to understand what you are like seeing when you are drawing from like a really like weird angle, then just search for more references. With like reverse image search, you can pretty much find every single model of every single vehicle you can find or imagine. So just try to use technology to help yourself. Most likely after like finishing everything, I will try to search for all the models to see what I was actually drawing. Because this time, usually I do it beforehand, but this time I kinda downloaded what seemed cool for me and just went for it. So I will need to make my homework later. And knowing what you are drawing is might be a really good thing for you, because later, like in the future, maybe you will need to draw something exactly like this. Maybe you will need like this exact model of a motorcycle, of vehicle or whatever, and just by pure accident you will just remember what it was, so you will save some time on searching, and maybe you will like be able to find a better photo for your reference, because usually the first photo that you find of something is not the best photo you can find of the thing that you are going to draw. And if the like place for sitting in here is kinda like going under the handles, then I will like add a slight white offset to the handle, so it will look a little bit more like it's in front of it. This thing is getting a bit narrower in here, and on top it has this cool looking stripes, so I will just add some stripes to it. Again, not a perfect pattern, just the interpretation of the pattern. So there's a lot of place always to improve on this type of things. And I guess instead of like white spaces, I prefer it to have a bit more dark spaces going on in between. This metal part in here. No, it's not going like this. It's going down to the side and a bit down. Be lighter in here. Back in here. It's also going like this. I don't know why, but always when I'm drawing vehicles, I'm getting hungry really quickly. I think it might be really taxing for my brain to think about all this geometry. So yeah, this is a bit like this. I don't know if this type of guy like should take me 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 1 hour. I only hope it won't take me like 10 hours to finish. Also, when you are drawing something, just remember, like the vast majority of drawing, pretty much anything, is just a series of decision making things. So you pretty much need to like make a decisions what type of stroke you want to make, and the more you will draw, the easier it will be for you, because you will be used to like making certain decisions, and after sometimes you'll pretty much have a muscle memory for all of this type of things, so you wouldn't even think about like choosing something. You will just naturally do it without even thinking about it. So this is pretty much the one of the best ways to improve, is to like repeat and repeat and repeat the same things over and over again. And basically, if you like having some problems with the drawing, so if you feel like the drawing is hard, most likely it means that you are like going to in the right direction, because if you are struggling with something, then it means there's a place to improve on it. So while drawing this type of stuff, I wouldn't say like I'm really struggling with anything, but I have this like small lags with my brain, within my brain, that kind of make the whole drawing a bit harder. So I need to stop sometimes and think on the things that I'm going to draw. So there's definitely a place for improvement in here. And also what is really cool about this theme is most likely you will never like finish drawing every single model of the motor and everything, because like let's say, okay, maybe in Poland we don't have like that many motors designed by Polish people, like the famous models. But for example, if I were to choose, I don't know, motors in China or in Japan, most likely it will be like the endless resource of new references for me. So I could like draw and draw and draw forever all the vehicles, and I will never like finish everything. So it's a cool topic because, as I said, you will never run out of references. So I was missing the word running out. And this metal thingies, I have no idea how they are called in English language, but I also see the whole wheel. Whoa, whole wheel needs to go a bit down, so this thing is in the middle actually. Mm-hmm. Piping going on in here, and the wheel in the background is pretty much hidden in this setup, so I won't see much of it. Most likely I will suggest it's in there, and there is a leg in here. So after tuning, I need to work a bit more on the wheels. I forgot there is like this metal part going on inside. So just to add a little bit more dimension to it, I will add a bit more of this like metal pipes and the pattern on the wheel. And I think it looks kind of okay. It's not the best bike in the whole world, but it looks fine. I will add some shadow to it. Yes. Something like this. Yeah, I guess the shadow like that looks like the cast, like the light is casted from the top. Looks all right for this guy. So small things here. Here to make it look a bit more metallic. And I don't really like this shape in here. The wheel is kind of breaking here for me. And this whole part will go a bit more like this, so it's actually outside the whole thing. Holy shit, the stream is actually going for an hour 40 already. Jesus Christ. I was not expecting it to take that long. But yeah, this thing I guess this guy I will leave for another stream, because most likely I will go back to this topic. I think I will go with this bike now. I really feel like drawing bikes. So a bit more sportsy type of thing. If there is something that I was like never drawing before, it is like a sport bikes. Like, this thing is so out of my like interest zone. It's hard to comprehend. This is the opposite of my interests. And what is really cool about this one, it is slightly slanted to the side. So from the front, it's not like vertical. It is slightly like angled. So it's like sitting on this like small looking handle. So I will try to like mimic the thing from the start. So it will also cause the ellipse instead of like being like this, where we have like 4 points. It will like make it slant to the side. So actually the short axis will also be slanted a bit. So it will like lead to a little bit different directions. So just keep it in mind if you are drawing this type of things. And for this guy, I guess I will go a little bit more sketcher. So I will try to use a bit thicker lines. The process will be pretty much exactly the same as in the previous one. So I will like sketch the whole thing like with the fat lines. And then I will try to add on top of it. With like this type of vehicles, what is really cool is the geometry, because if you are drawing all of the boxes and everything, it might get hard to get into more dynamic, like organic shapes. So in here, as you can see, the geometry is really cool looking. It kind of looks like a mantis head. So if you are going to design a motorcycle or whatever like this, maybe like using some references from the nature is going to be kind of cool. And I always like to like mark the short axis, because it will allow me to remember the shape of it. This mouthpiece kinda looking like. Here is going the edge. It's wider here. And it's definitely one of the geometries I will need to look up later, how it looks from the front, because I'm kinda like guessing right now. I guess, well, this shape would go like this. Oh, it's actually going to the here. So this shape will be going a bit more like this. And these guys are hiding inside of it, okay? This is a bit wider then. So it kind of looks like a mouth. The screen. Mantis shape. Drawing while everything is slanted is also kind of cool. It's like a different type of card. This is going in here. The brakes, I guess, some weird shapes in here. Kind of rotate it back. So as I said, like if you are drawing something, just make something hard, but don't make everything hard for yourself while drawing. So in here, the hard part is drawing everything slanted, so I wouldn't care about like rotating the whole geometry, like to mirror everything from side to side. So I will try to this thing to get easier on me with this one. So it looks like this, like this. It goes in here, some cool looking parts here. This mouthpiece. And this is the cool part of sketching, like you don't really need to care that much about the sketch. Just draw it as you feel it, kinda. This cool looking something in here, and the cable, and some side lamps. Yeah, so pretty much the sketch for this guy is done. So now I will like reduce the opacity, cut it to the new layer, paste it, like this, and now I can kinda play with the actual geometry. So for this guy, it will be way more drawing of the geometry because it's more geometry heavy. Like the way more is happening in here. So for example, like the ridge of the screen, it's worth adding. So the top part of it and all the cross sections will greatly help like understanding the geometry actually a bit better. This peak type of thing happening in here. This geometry, as far as I understand, goes like a bit more like this. And then it changes the direction in here. Everything in here is a bit protruded. This geometry is definitely weird. I will need to check it later to see how it looks in a different shot. So I'm not really sure if I'm understanding it correctly. This is going back, so this will be straight. This will go in here. And I'm actually starting to get hungry. Longer angle. This, like this, like this. It's a bit further. Yeah, this one looks kind of wonky. It won't look as good as I want it to look good, but I guess it will kind of mean I need to make another try for it later to refine all the shapes. Engine part, the fuel part, not engine part. Cross sections. Handles. Also, my setup is a bit different from the reference. Mine is slightly more like skewed to the side, so I'm seeing the whole geometry a bit differently. So this is also might be the reason why some geometry look kinda odd. But again, I'm not trying to replicate everything perfectly. I'm trying to kinda understand it a bit better. So like here, like here. Click shape. Parts of the wheel. And the whole thing happening in here. Brakes. Also, while drawing this type of guy, I feel like I'm way more sure what is happening. So I'm also kind of trying to rush this one a bit more. And this is usually a common thing. So if you don't really feel like drawing something, I thought it will be a good idea. And it is, because it's hard for me. Now I know what type of like geometries I should study a bit more, or where I should like put the focus of the things a bit more. But one of the things that, for example, I noticed myself doing is when I'm not sure of something, I try to draw it a bit quicker than usual. So I'm kind of trying to rush it. So if this type of thing is happening, then I know it's hard for me. And even if I will like fail completely while drawing this type of a thing, because it might happen, like it might be a complete fail, a complete disaster, but I will know what actually is hard for me to draw. Like I will know what caused me problems, then it's a huge win for me, because I will know where I should put like my energy to practice and what I should practice. Because one of the things that can really limit like the progress that you are making is not knowing what to actually draw, not knowing what to practice. And you might end up like drawing the same thing over and over again. And by drawing the same thing over and over again, you won't pretty much improve. Like you will improve in one aspect of the things that you are like trying to draw, but you won't improve that much. So now I kind of know. Organic geometry needs a lot of revisions. I will need to study a bit more. I guess maybe it will be the theme of the next stream. So I will try to like construct way more complex shapes. Maybe I will even try to make like a longer stream. So instead of like 2 or 3 hours, maybe I will like spend a whole day drawing something like this. I will see. It will be a cool thing to do, I guess. The sitting cushion. It's a really nice shape, like with the cutout in the end. There's triangular cushion. But as you can see, you don't always need to like construct everything perfectly. Sometimes like this marker looking like underpainting, underdrawing maybe will do just fine. especially when you are like designing or just sketching for fun. It might be even relieving to try to draw in this manner, because it simply will be a bit more pleasant to do so. Mark the wheels. And one of the things that you really need to practice if you are going to draw any type of vehicle is ellipses. Like this shit is extremely hard. I remember when I was like learning, like actually at the beginning of my journey with drawing, I can easily say I was not understanding ellipses at all for like almost 2 years. And after like 2 years or something like this, something clicked in my brain, and then I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. But for a really long period of time, like the ellipses were not making any sense for me at all. They were like hard, and I was like neglecting to like train them. This wheel is not looking good. Shading is bad, and I was like neglecting them way too much, and it was like really hindering my progress. So if there's one thing that you should really practice, and that will be really painful to practice, they are the ellipses. I strongly believe like learning how to draw ellipses is one of the hardest things in drawing. Like to learn how to draw properly. But with all the different things that are happening with the perspective and to the perspective, it's really not an easy task to make a nice ellipse. And most of the time I will see a lot of like pros, like pretty much everyone will end up using some sort of a tool for drawing ellipses. But I also kind of believe if you can like get rid of all the like tools and you can just purely draw everything, then it will be way easier actually to draw the pattern. Yeah, but I don't really like this guy, how he's turning out. So and also, if anyone is like wondering, I have some plans to stream on Twitch also, but I need to figure out how to do it properly, because like the last tries were like tries and nothing like worked as intended to. So if anyone is like preferring to watch on stream soon, I don't know when exactly, but I will be on Twitch too. Now let's draw this guy. So the more you will draw this type of things, the like quicker you will become, because you will kind of get like warmed up for all of this type of things. Because I have still quite some time, quite some things to do. In the moment where I'm kind of feeling like I warmed up for the drawing, I will need to go, unfortunately. Mark the wheel. Darker in here. And there is this metal part, this metal edge. But yeah, this drawing is definitely a fail. It is not a nice drawing. It did not work as intended, so Yeah, it happens. It's not like terribly bad, but in my opinion it's quite bad, so yeah. For the shading of this guy, I don't think I will even bother do something more complex. I will just mark some basic geometries. I will mark the. I think it looks too bad. As you can see, drawing this guy is a little bit a pain in the ass. This is a hard one. So I will only do is to select the geometries that are black. That I want to be black. Everything in here, in here, in here. Yep, with this part, with this part, with this part. Everything that is in here. I will take a soft brush. Make it slightly darker from the bottom. And this part in here will get way darker. Whoops. So, yeah. The last guy is an ugly one. It's not a nice drawing, but, well, sometimes you will make some bad drawings. And now it will kind of look like I'm escaping from the bad drawings, but yeah, I guess for today this will be all. So only 3 things done. 2 of them kind of decent. So let's turn everything off. So for like 2 hours of work, not a crazy amount of work done, but something was done. And I guess that will be all. So thanks anyone for watching. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. After doing like 2 or 3 more streams with this type of topic, I guess I will like upload the PSD file in the description. So yeah, this will be all, and subscribe if you enjoyed the stream and everything, and goodbye.